Welcome to another edition of the Star Local Media Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch. I'm the sports editor with Star Local Media, and I am being joined by Kendrick Johnson, sports editor for the McKinney Courier-Gazette, as well as Brian Murphy, sports editor for the Frisco Enterprise, Little Elm Journal, and Salina Record. And gentlemen, we're here to talk some more year in review. We are halfway through our year in review series, looking back on the 2017-18 athletics year for all 14 of our markets. We've got 7 markets in the tank, so if you haven't already, you can check out podcasts as we go year in review for Plano, Rowlett, Mesquite, Lake Cities, Carrollton, The Colony, and Little Elm. We've already got those taken care of. Hope you give those a listen. So we got 3 more we're going to knock out today. 3 more, a few of our bigger markets. We're going to focus on Frisco, McKinney, and Allen, all 3 of which had some pretty big happenings throughout the previous school year. So Brian, let's start with you and just everything. I mean, Frisco ISD, where do you even begin with just all that Frisco ISD is able to accomplish within a given athletics year?
You took the words right out of my mouth. Where do I begin? You look at football with Frisco Lone Star. Do I look at girls basketball with Frisco Lone Star, the number 3 team in the state? Or do you switch it over to Wakeland, the boys baseball retaining dominance? Or do you look at boys and girls soccer? Wakeland boys and girls soccer teams winning the state title in the same year for the first time since 1984, 85. Yeah, I think it was somewhere around there. But something.
It's been a long time.
Before you were born.
A few years before I was born. First time that had been done since Richardson did that, so that was awesome feat there. I mean, and then Wakeland baseball, they lose their entire starting roster, still win the district. I don't know how they keep doing it. And then let's see here. Frisco Liberty boys basketball under first-year head coach Stephen Fryer. Shout out to his wife, who's a coach at McKinney North. They won the district at 13-1. They had a nice little playoff run. I could see them making a deeper run next year. They had the district MVP in Zion Richardson.
They built a nice little program over there.
Oh yeah, very very nice. Girls volleyball was really intense. They had 3 teams win at least 11 games. Reedy, they went the distance, battled it out with Prosper in a thrilling third round matchup, and it seemed like the top Frisco team battled with Prosper in the third round of almost every playoffs. It was so entertaining. It happened in girls basketball with Prosper and Frisco Lone Star. It happened in football with Wakeland and Prosper. Wakeland and Prosper had a nice little rivalry going, and even Wakeland boys and Prosper boys met in the first round of the playoffs in boys soccer because Wakeland finished 4th in their district. The defending state champions finished 4th in the district, faced Prosper, and that was an entertaining match in just the first round. So
who's pound for pound the best program in Frisco ISD?
Out of every sport, I think I said it a few weeks ago, I would have to say the Frisco Lone Star girls basketball team. They were phenomenal. Mallory Adams was their superstar.
So your emails to Brian Murphy.
Yeah, that's right. B. Murphy at starlocalmedia.com.
No, I'm going to get emails from Independence, Wakeland, Liberty. No, but they were just so dominant. They're starting 5. They didn't even really have a solid bench where they went deep into their bench. They maybe ran like 7 girls deep.
Mallory Adams was
phenomenal. Adriana Quezada.
I don't want to say her last name. I would get messed up.
I remember you raved about her when you saw her play McKinney North or something.
And the PA system was crappy, but kept saying quesadilla. Like, the quesadilla lady could play.
Yeah, she'll be a senior. She's going to be a senior next year.
Oh, so she's really going to get touches next year.
She was awesome.
She's like a female Charles Barkley. You get on the block, she puts in work.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good comparison. So she was a really good compliment to Mallory Adams. Head coach Katie Stinton is awesome. She's very intense. You see her during the game. She is
up
in
and
your
down.
face. Oh my gosh!
But don't fall in those heels either. She
wears the heels and she rocks it, man.
I saw them twice. I'm like, man, this lady's gonna fall. No, she
is legit. So shout out to Coach Stinton. Lone Star girls probably the pound for pound best team. After that, maybe Wakeland girls soccer. They were pretty dominant, and that's another team that has.
Hey, you got high standards. You win a state title.
It's state title or bust. And then
but see, I would say that from what I remember from going by and talk to Gracie. What's Gracie?
Bryan.
Gracie Bryan. This year, their main thing was they wanted a state title, but they wanted to get through Highland Park. Next year, I think it's going to be state or bust. It was state or bust for the boys, but for the girls, from what I recall, it was like we got to be Highland Park.
Now next year it's
going to be state or bust.
Highland Park team that people wanted to go through. You know what I mean? Like this year, it was like we got to be Highland Park. We got to be Highland Park, number 1 team in the country. This and that, and they beat that. They beat them, did that, And now they're going to be really gunning after Wakeland girls next year because the majority of their team is coming back. Gracie Bryant, she's a TCU commit. She's awesome.
She's like 5'2", will make you look silly.
Man, she's like Messi. That ball
really
sticks to her feet.
legit.
And then Peyton Adams, the captain, defender, she's coming back, and a bunch of other girls.
State MVP in the state tournament.
Yeah, too many girls to name. They're coming back. They have a new coach. Shout out to former Little Elm head coach Jimmy Langford. He spent the last 2 years at Little Elm. He's making the move to Wakeland. He was an assistant coach under Sid Corey at Denton way back in the day. So some ties there. Kind of an obvious choice to bring.
And he won a state title at McKinney Boyd.
Had a cup of coffee in your neck of the woods out in
and North.
Yeah.
In 2006. So 3 state titles.
So he's got his own state. He's got two to his own name. So he's legit.
Yeah. So then, now I'm just rambling off dominant teams because I don't want to leave anyone out, and because there's so many good teams all throughout the Frisco area in every sport. The Lone Star football team, they were so dominant. I really thought they had a state run in them this year.
Hey, then you have 4 D1ers that show up that wasn't a team before. It's like, hey.
And it's saying a lot when you can take a quarterback out and who's at Utah now. They lose their receiver who's at Utah now, and they lose a bunch of guys, and then they just put another one in MJ Rivers, another D1 type quarterback. Yeah, you lose Jason Shelley, bring in MJ Rivers, but now they lose MJ Rivers. What are they going to do next year? But that's a whole different discussion for a whole different podcast.
Tell me this: the Frisco Lebanon. How do you think they're going to adjust when they get to varsity next year? That the first year, will next year be the first year to be on varsity?
Yeah, in the team sports, yeah.
With this division being so stacked, it's like this is not the one you want to just stick your toe in.
This is their first time in 5A with the other Frisco Powers, and I'm like that you brought up Lebanon Trail because their girls golf team was really dominant. They finished second in state in 4A at just a few weeks ago. They breezed through Class 4A, and they even fared well against all the 5A teams. They in the Frisco Cup or Frisco whatever they call it earlier in the year. They were competing right there with Liberty, who's a top dog in girls golf. Another team in the running for best pound for pound team. They're in the state tournament year in year out. They were in again this year in Class 5A. But Lebanon Trail, the Lady Trailblazers, they're going to be a team to watch, and they were definitely one of the most dominant teams in Frisco this past year.
If Memorial and Lebanon Trail need any reason for confidence just in how quickly, especially like when it comes to sports like football, as far as how long it'll take before they can get up, into that level where they're competitive and competing for playoff spots. Feels like if they need just anything to take pause in, it's looking at the job that Reedy did this past year in football. That was one of the more impressive stories in Frisco ISD for sure.
That was something else. Reedy, they won 3 games their very first season on the gridiron 2 years ago. Only 1 district game, and then all of a sudden they win 9 games in their second ever varsity season. They didn't have seniors that first year, and then all of a sudden you had seniors to that team. It just made a world of difference. And Reedy, they just elevated in every sport. They're not one of those teams they're having all those growing pains. No, they're good in volleyball. They're good in girls basketball also. They gave Lone Star a little bit of fits some parts of the season. They finished second or third in that district, top 3 in that district, which is saying a lot. Second year in that program. And then the baseball team, they had that nice little playoff run. They won their first ever playoff series against Lake Dallas. So Reedy on the rise. So good signs for Memorial programs like Memorial and Lebanon Trail.
You mentioned, obviously a lot about the Wakeland girls soccer team and what they were able to accomplish. The boys took a completely different route, though. And I was just kind of thinking back, like in the moment, as you were following that team that season, as they turned to 4th place, to finish in district into a state championship. Did from your vantage point, expectation-wise, did this feel like a state championship team? When did it feel like a state championship? Because surely it wasn't entering the playoffs. That when they're sitting in 4th in district, there's had to be some sort of like a malaise there.
They never felt like a playoff or a championship team until maybe when they beat Prosper in the first round. But the whole time during the regular season, I was like, man, they took a step back. They lost a bunch of their guys. But, the same thing happened to them the year before. They lost a bulk of their guys that, almost won the state title in 2016. And they lost in a penalty shootout. They get a new head coach and this and that. And they, come through all this adversity and win the state title last year. And I was like, but I didn't think they were going to be able to do it again this year. And they did. After they beat Prosper pretty handily at that, Prosper who won the district 14-5A, they looked good all district long, all season long. And then once they beat them, and off the top of my head, I think they beat Wiley East in the second round. And then I met with Coach Holt and those guys, and they were just talking about how, the regular season's just kind of boring to us. We only gear up for the playoffs. And then
They're Golden State Warriors mentality.
They proved it though. They didn't just talk about it.
And then so once I was told that, and then they won the third round game. Once they beat Centennial, that was hey, we are for real, because that was a huge showdown. Wakeland Centennial in the third round. Centennial was ranked 4th in the state at that point.
Wow.
And they dominated in the district. Only lost one game, I believe. And then once they beat the Titans, I was like, okay, this team is
soccer,
really, really
you need
legit.
the ball to bounce your way, which I can get to on my team. It didn't bounce away from my program. But talking about also the guy, I forgot his name, the kid that got MVP in the state tournament. The kid went from literally the water boy to the state MVP.
Mark Barbonis, man, yeah. So he was on the
Legit.
He was on the team his freshman year, but he was a manager, team manager. He was there at state when they won. He got a medal, but he was in jeans, blue jeans, and a T-shirt. Not on the roster. He was on the JV2 team, not even the JV1. I didn't even know they had different JVs. I guess that's how good soccer is in the Frisco area. But he, according to Coach Holt, he was doing really well for the JV2 team. He showed some promise. Coach Holt was hoping that he could be a contributor sooner than later, and that it came much sooner than anticipated. He was one of the top goal scorers in the district during the regular season. In the playoffs, he scored almost every game. You look at the stat sheet, Mark Barbonis. Against Prosper, he scored a huge goal against the Eagles, and then he wins state tournament MVP just as a sophomore.
Wow,
so
what a
Mark Barbonis. And a fun fact about him is he played a club game the next morning after winning the state title at 8 a.m. Yeah, he told me and Kendrick that when we did a story over him and Peyton Adams.
Yeah, and I can segue into my team. Like you were talking about how they got hot and did things. My team of the year for McKinney easily goes to McKinney Boyd boys soccer team. They were number one. They were in the top 3 in the nation for the last 2 years. Have not lost a regular season game. Got upset in the first round last year against Southlake in shootouts. So they lost. It didn't go as a loss in regulation. Came with all that expectation. 12 seniors, new coach. All they did is ran the table again. And this in 6-6A, as Matt can attest, is a beast in soccer. Like you got dudes we got teams in the playoffs that didn't make the playoffs that got 3 or 4 D1ers on their team. That's how deep it is. They ran through, and once the playoffs started, they started playing their best. Played one of the best games. I happened to be in New York for UFC, but I missed it. But they played, had like 3-hour rain delay, and they ended up playing McKinney High in the third round, Crosstown Showdown, to go to the regional tournament, which was a big deal.
Wasn't that like the biggest soccer game in McKinney history?
Yeah, they said it had like 3,000 to 4,000 people.
Wow.
There,
I think that's only the only one other time did 2 McKinney ISD programs meet in the soccer playoffs at one point. I think it was North of McKinney back in like the 90s
and McKinney won
or
that
the mid-2000s.
Yeah. So they got through that. They played the regionals in Midland. I make the 5-hour drive out west. It's flat. It's boring. Make sure you have a lot of energy, because you can doze off going down good old 20 going that other way. It's not a good look. They beat. I was one of the Lubbock team. Lubbock went for Friendship, and like the craziest win game I ever seen. Like it was a 45-mile win. Like my guy from Friendship kicks the ball up, it literally swirled around and then went back another 10 yards. Like it was a punt. It would have been a negative 10 yards on the football field.
There were a lot of soccer games like that this year. The games I was at, the wind was just such a factor. Especially in the regional tournament at Standard Stadium.
Yeah, this is a regional tournament.
Oh my God, that whole weekend of this regional tournament.
Just weird, because you were 5 hours away from the rest of us.
It was a 45-mile win, and then the next day they ended up winning. They were the better team in that region. I usually don't say like stuff like that lightly, but they played up to their potential. They didn't really do anything wrong. It just they got caught on a random play. The win it was only 35-mile the next day against Irvin MacArthur, and it tricked the defender and the goalie, and the guy got between them and scored a fluke goal with like 10 minutes left. I felt bad. Like I'm talking about parents, players, everybody was boo-hooing. Usually I'd be like, it's just a game, but I kind of felt bad. Like if they get through that game and that doesn't happen, they would have won the state title this year. Especially looking at what happened in state, I'm almost 100% sure. I would go to Vegas, and y'all know I like to win money in Vegas. Boy would have won state this year.
Yeah, I saw Irving play a little bit of their match because I was at the state tournament. So I saw them play the following weekend.
They weren't as good as Boyd, were they?
No, they played a team
They
from
played that game
Houston.
at the Star somewhere where there's like no elements. They win that game 9 out of 10 times. I would put money on that.
They
That's
played
how
a team from Houston in the state tournament and got dominated 3-1 is what I'm seeing here. And I, just kind of writing my game stories, glancing up, I just wasn't too impressed with Irving. So it's kind of fluky that they
The
lost.
thing about just like those crazy weather games that you can just have the unexpected just kind of get in the way. Just it really does level the playing field out in a way that the game where, like you said, if you're playing indoors where it's just you're playing on neutral conditions and whatnot. So yeah.
And then, boy, if you look back to All-State accolades, Chase Coy, that man there, redemption. A lot of people have little things and stuff. He took it personal last year that he got beat 3 times in the shootout by Carroll. Shout out to Chase, my man. Mentally, fortitude, focus, did what they had to do. Got to the season. They play Southlake in the first round this year. Go to shootout again, but this time it's at Boyd. This time they win 3-1 and sent them home. So that was kind of like the springboard to getting them where they want to go. That was probably the second most impressive thing behind. We already know what I'm going to say. 599. When you see Texas high school football history and you don't know when it's going to be broken or if it's going to be broken, that's like one of those things because you didn't know, like when you were watching, even though I think Gadek had like 300 yards at halftime, you weren't thinking like, I think they're going to pull him out. Like, I didn't think he's going to get enough. But Pine Least kept scoring just enough that they had to keep him in. And then they're going to be cool with like 550. I don't even think they knew the record. Some kid hit some late on a personal foul, and then they had about 2.5 minutes left. It's like, oh, we getting this now, and that's how 599 happened. It's like a lot of little things other than Pine Least couldn't stop him that went into 599. People think they just gave him the ball every play. That's not how it happened.
Yeah, just to add some context for this, I'm surely everybody had heard at some point throughout football season that the running back for McKinney, Matt Gadek, set the state's single game rushing record with 599 against Plano East, and Matt Gadek was such a big storyline coming into the season because of how much was expected out of him, in that McKinney senior class in general, but just the year that he had was just one for the record books.
Had 2,300 plus yards, and he missed the game, technically 2 games. He got hurt on the first carry of the second game, and it was a 60. This is how context everything, how every play legitimately counts. In the 599 game, he became McKinney's all-time leading rusher. Then school's 120 years old, so he's all-time. So that was impressive enough. He became in the 599 game, but he had a 65-yard run. The first or second play against Keller, the guy throws him down the shoulder. It got called back on a hole, so therefore he got no official carries. He missed that game and started the next game against Midlothian, who had 380 against as a junior. Yeah. So he ended up missing the all-time leading rusher for McKinney ISD by 50 yards. So if that hole doesn't call, he's the all-time leading rusher.
I'd rather have the state record for most rushing yards in a game.
This is for the career though. This is for
now when the buzz in the press box, when what certain rushing.
Probably
did you guys realize what was happening in the moment there?
By the time when he scored his 5th touchdown, was like on a 60-yard. It put him about 480. That's like, whoa, people started looking up and stuff, and that's when that started. And it's like, they got to keep him in. They were only up by 14 points. So it's like, they got to keep him in.
So it wasn't like they were milking it on purpose.
No.
They needed him.
It was, I'm going to say the final score.
It was a high-scoring game.
It was like 63-49.
Yeah, Plano East was scoring pretty effectively well. This wasn't like a 64-13 style blowout.
63-50.
So Plano East.
I was close. I was there. Yeah, that's why they had to keep him in the game. So it wasn't like they just run up the score or anything like that. But they were trying to, like I said, they were trying to milk the clock. He probably would have finished with about 550, and this guy hits him and got a personal foul. It's kind of like, oh, we getting this record now. That's kind of like, so Plano East kind of set themselves up for that one.
And that was just a year in general, as far as team accomplishments go. What the McKinney football team did, being able to make the playoffs out of 6-6A, that was no small feat.
Yeah, if Boyd is a team of McKinney ISD, the class has to be the class of 2018 for the McKinney High seniors. They went to playoffs in football, and they hadn't been in 9 years. Girls basketball had one of the best teams in the decade, and they got beat by two-time defending state champion Duncanville by 2 points. When if there was a point spread in Vegas, it's a good double figures.
Oh yeah.
And then their 3 top players, Quincy Noble, Kayla Moultrie, and Janai Braxton, all going D1 schools. That's pretty impressive. They were 4-year starters, all going to be playing on Saturdays next year. And then also too, not to be overlooked, is the one of my teams that wouldn't be so many that all run together.
What sport do you think?
The basketball.
Oh yeah, McKinney Boys basketball.
Nobody picked these guys. They were picked to finish. They were like maybe win 4 games in district, and they ended up getting in the playoffs and won a playoff game. And surprise! Shout out to Coach Watson and his team for finding ways to get it done. And I was telling Matt, there's a guy named Byron Scobie. He came over from Plano West. He didn't start off at McKinney. Every time I come to the gym, he's like going Stephen Curry, like against Denton Guy, number 1 team in the state. This guy hauls off and he was like 0 for 3 in the first quarter, and then second half he hits like 6 3-pointers and he just goes nuts. Like I'm talking about B. Murphy get hit in the arm, falling out of bounds, boom, back and make it in it. And 1 3-point.
I remember E.J. Clark the year before, and he was the guy, and then they lost him.
They lost 30 points a game.
Yeah.
They lost 30 points a game. Number 1 scorer in the area and number 2 in the state, all state players. So nobody knew where this offense was going to come from, and it was a committee where if one person got hot, they would feed off for him and ride him, and they had good strategies, and which ended up getting them in the playoffs because me and Matt were both at the game. They needed to be Plano Senior to get in. And Scobie actually was not hot that game, but then
Michael Hartford. I remember Michael Hartford. He got real hot in the first half.
They wrote him.
And obviously then, if we've mentioned the standout moments for Boyd, standout moments for McKinney, obviously if we're going to look at McKinney North, that track and field team had a pretty solid year as well.
Kevin, Janiah Martin, and we got London Colbreth. London's only a sophomore, going to be a junior. Yeah. Janiah is going to A&M. It's 2nd year in a row that North Stop Sprinter out of was going to be heading to A&M as Coach Richards has formed a program that's been in the top 2 in the state for 3 years in a row. That's very hard to do.
I agree, and a talented classification.
And had they caught a break, they could have won this year. This year, they weren't expected to be within like 20 points of Mansfield Lake Ridge. They were within 7 of 3-peating. So any sport you do in Texas, it's hard to 3-peat. It could be golf. It's hard to 3-peat. And props to London Colbreth, who... Dude, guess how many races this lady has ran and she's not lost?
How many? Too many.
55 UR races she has not lost.
So pound for pound, she's been the most dominant individual athlete in McKinney.
She legitimately could already claim as be the most decorated runner in McKinney, and she still got 2 more years. Right. Like she set a state record. She's the state record holder in the 3200, and that's any classification, and she's a state record holder for cross country, and the only one she's missing right now, which she's gunning for this year, she told me 2 weeks ago, is the mile. She only ran a 450, and from the record, it's a 448.
What are those UIL record books going to look like in 2 years when she's done?
If they space it out, I don't know how they did. This year she had to do the 32 and the 1600 the same day, so that kind of she had to conserve energy. But last year when she ran in separate days, if they do that, this year it's game over. She's getting both of them.
Oh, is there anything else you wanted to add for McKinney?
North, they went to playoffs in softball. Of course, the track team dominated. Boys and girls basketball, not to overlook them. 9 years in a row getting the playoffs, both programs. They take pride in getting the playoffs. Even though they were one and done, you can't win if you don't be in the dance. They're in the dance every year. And then McKinney North football, first football team since 2014 in McKinney to win a playoff game. Hats off to Coach Fetchy and them. They came up against Highland Park, who beat everybody. It's no shame in losing to them, but they'll be back this year with a nice supporting cast. They find a way to get it done over there in North.
Yeah, so that's a look at the athletics years for McKinney and for Frisco. We've got one more. I got some thoughts on just the year that Allen had in a few moments. We will pick that up in a moment after a word from this sponsor. Today's Student Athlete Spotlight is brought to you by Bavarian Grill, authentic Bavarian food and beer garden. Listed by the Zagat survey as the highest rated German restaurant in Texas for 12 years in a row. 12 years! That's 3 presidential terms. You can enjoy traditional and authentic spring favorites now. Everything from appetizers like slow roasted ham hock and potato pancakes to entrees like bratwurst or breaded schnitzel. Bring your whole family for lunch and dinner. They are open Tuesday through Saturday, located off Parker and Highway 75 in Plano. Bavarian Grill. And now, let's get back to the podcast. And we're going to round out this year in review podcast with a look at Allen. What happened in Allen this year? Let me see.
Not much, right?
No, it's just a little old town out in the middle of nowhere, just trying to get by best it can. Allen had, probably pound for pound, maybe its best athletics year ever in 2017-18, and it's just you look just on a sheer tail of the tape standpoint. They made the playoffs in all 8 of the bracket sports, so to speak. They won 3 team state championships. They won district titles in football, girls soccer, baseball, and then in the some of the more solo sports, they won district titles in boys swimming, girls swimming, wrestling, boys track. Allen just had just pound for pound just a banner year, start to finish, across all sports. Obviously, just going to look at just the team state champions and whatnot that emerged from this past school year. They won team championships in football, boys basketball, and wrestling. 2 of those might be a bit more familiar to most of y'all. The football team obviously is as well known and recognizable a football program as any in the country. They won their 5th state championship. They're first of the post Kyler Murray Allen Eagles. They had.
I would say you're being dramatic with 42-0. That can be tough.
No, yeah, they only won 3 straight with him. This is the first post Kyler championship. They did so on the strength of another 16-0 season, their third undefeated year over the past 5 years, dating all the way back to when that gaudy winning streak began back in 2012. Allen has now, as of the end of last season, they're on a run where they've won 87 out of 89 games in the UIL's largest classification, playing against some of the top pound-for-pound programs, not just in the state, but the country. I've said it before, I'll say it again. No matter who you are, that is objectively incredible to be able to just maintain that level of consistency against the kind of competition that they see. And this year was no different. They had a very difficult playoff campaign against teams, against playoff matchups against the likes of Hebron, Arlington Martin, and Euless Trinity. Even South Grand Prairie gave them maybe as good a game as anyone did during the playoffs. But then you had Round Rock, Cedar Ridge, Lake Travis. If you're just talking about just some of the 2 of the most decorated
we saw the South Grand Prairie game. That was way closer than people realize.
That was a tie game in the 4th quarter.
And they could have easily been down 14-0 at halftime.
Don't they always meet with South Grand Prairie in the second or?
But they had a controversial call that me and Matt saw that it looked like it was a touchdown for South Grand Prairie, but there's no review until now. Because of that game.
It won't be in the second round though. It'll be only at the state.
State championship games. But actually, I saw the majority of Allen's games last season, but because they decided to schedule the state championships during the right next to Christmas, I was actually in California visiting my mom for the holidays, so I didn't get to see the biggest game of the year for Allen. We had Tim Glaze out there covering that. I had to watch it on one of our freelance photographers. Actually, I watched it on one of our freelance.
Fox Sports Go.
One of our freelance photographers, his Sling TV, or was it Sling TV, or one of those? What's the thing you can? It's one of those apps. Whatever, I forget exactly what it's called, but I had to watch it through his subscription there on my laptop out in California. So I did get to see the game at least. Just a wild game. There's always going to be a fascinating what if on just what happens if Lake Travis's quarterback doesn't get injured on the first snap of the game, because it was like Allen got up big and then Lake Travis rallies back and takes a lead there in the second half, and it's just back and forth, and Allen ends up pulling out a 35-33 victory. For their 5th state championship. It was a spectacular team. A team that really built its identity on the run game. Brock Sturgis had pound for pound probably the best year an Allen running back has ever had.
Second behind Matt Gadek in DFW area.
And then their defense was just lights out. Corey Kane's as good a defensive coordinator as there is in the state, and they just continue to churn out just excellent units year after year. They had some injury problems at linebacker that they were able to work through, and it was a quality team, certainly up there with the best that program has ever put on the field. With the wrestling program, it is just death taxes, and Allen wrestling winning state championships in dominant fashion. They won their 9th consecutive state title this year. You can make a case that pound for pound, the most dominant athletics program in the state of Texas is Allen wrestling, and that not just present day, but at some point I need to dig back through and just see what kind of historical context there is to this run that the Eagles are on, because it's not just that they're winning state titles every year. It's that they just do so to where it's not even a contest. they more than doubled up the point total of the second place team at state. I mean, they just rewrite the record books every year for things like most points accrued at the state meet, largest margin of victory at the state meet. They had, I mean, this year was just.
What makes them so dominant? Other than
they do a good job of getting their kids in that program at a young age, and they develop them to where once they hit the high school mats, they're all primed and ready to go. It's definitely, I mean, it is a feeder system in the truest sense. They had seven wrestlers win state titles this year. They had state championships for Braden Redlin, Alex Lyles, Jawan Robinson, AJ Ferrari, awesome name, Braxton Brown, Logan Brown, and Trent Dooley. The notable accolade within there is that Braden Redlin and Alex Lyles, they went 4 for 4 on state championships in all 4 years of high school. They won state, and that was actually the first time in UIL history that a male and female wrestler have won 4 consecutive state championships from the same school at the same time. So some nice rarefied air for those two. Whereas football and wrestling have become, I mean, you expect Allen wrestling to win state. You expect the football team to win state. The boys basketball team, though, that was definitely a surprise, and probably of the teams that I covered on the Allen side, definitely one that I had it was a fun team to cover.
What about that theory about you see a team 3 times?
Yeah.
As I said it all year. I was just talking. I said if they see Geyer again, they're gonna. I told Matt, like in the regular season, they see Geyer again, it's not gonna work out for Geyer. It's hard to be a team 3 times in high school basketball. They saw him a 3rd time.
If there's a shot clock in high school basketball,
they don't win.
Allen doesn't even come close to winning that game, right?
No,
probably not. That's the thing. Yeah,
because then Geyer team is pretty loaded. Like I'll be shocked if they don't get to at least the state tournament this year. All those losers are coming back, but Allen did what they had to do.
Oh yeah.
But they learned from their losses, though. Hats off to that coaching staff. They're like, first time they tried to run with them, then ain't gonna work out for us. Then they try to play up and down tempo. That didn't work out. So then it gets go number 3.
They decided to they unveiled that head coach Jeff McCullough kind of unveiled the game plan to kind of slow the game down. I think it might have been in the hotel room the day of the game.
Oh, he made that. That's what.
Oh yeah, it was just a few hours before the game when he got their starting 5 together, their captains, and just this is what I think we should do, and they decided to buy in. And I mean that's a tough
contrast.
It's tough to get that to work because Allen's not comfortable playing that way, but I mean your margin for error is so slim because that game was like a 2 to 3 possession game the entire way, just because the possessions were so low that you're not going to get you can't really make a mistake because you're just waiting for that run by Geyer, and it almost happened there in the 4th quarter. Jalen Wilson got hot, and he was able to bring him within I think it was like 3-4 points at one point, but Allen held on. I mean, this Allen team was just a blast to watch. Just as an objective basketball fan, I mean, balance, depth, high IQ. They're versatile. They could play a bunch of different styles. They weren't ever relying on any one particular player. They prided themselves all year, and that any one of their starting 5 could score
ways to win.
Yeah, could score 20 a game, and it was just a fun team to watch. Like we just alluded to, they beat a murderer's row of teams, especially as they got deeper into the playoffs.
Even McKinney, quote unquote, upset them in Allen.
Yeah.
And they looked at tape and like, this ain't happening. When they came over to McKinney, they like, we know how to win. Not gonna let that happen. Yeah. But you saw them in state. Did they play off that confidence? Because guys, we know Geyer pound for pound is one of the best teams in the nation.
You could definitely see their depth shine through, because not only did they, for folks who didn't follow high school basketball, Denton Geyer was number 1 ranked in the state all the way through the regular season. That they
almost was wire to wire.
What 4 kids that are like high level Division I recruits, including a couple in Davion Harmon, Jalen Wilson, who are like the best in the country, level good.
And they're all coming back next year. Well, 3 of the 4 coming back next year.
And then they went to when they got to the state semifinals, they drew Austin Westlake, who was the number 2 ranked team in the state. And if Geyer wasn't the most talented team in Texas, Westlake was number 2 because they had 4 kids who were like high level D1 studs. And that was the game that was kind of wore on. Like Allen, you could really see that. I mean, well, first off, Allen didn't. There wasn't anywhere near like what they did against Geyer. They took
their normal style.
They tried to use their depth to collectively wear them down. And just bank on Geyer. I mean, Westlake had the real top end star power in their roster, but once you got into their bench a bit more, once you got into the second half, you could really see the depth advantage between these two teams really take shape. And Allen ended up winning that game in pretty convincing fashion, far more convincing fashion than against Geyer. But then, then you had that just contrasting with a team in Katie Tompkins, who they saw in the state final. I believe Tompkins was only like number 17 ranked in the state at the time.
Let's say Katie Tompkins is like kind of like a very new, not like very new, but like they're within 5 years.
They were like them and Allen. The reason, because that game went to overtime. Allen ended up winning state in overtime, 49-47 in the game that, where you look at kind of what they were able to exploit, within, against Geyer and Westlake. Well, Tompkins had a roster that was much more comparable to Allen's from a stylistic standpoint. A lot of athletes who were pretty similar physically. So trying to like impose their style of play was a little bit tougher against a team that could do a lot of the things that Allen normally thrives at.
And Allen being battle tested.
Oh yeah. Because that set up probably maybe the defining sequence. When I'm going to look back at 2017-18 athletics for Allen, it's going to be that last moment of overtime in that state title game where you have it is a tie game, 47-47. Tompkins has the ball. They're going for the win. They take the shot a little prematurely. Jalen Scott with Allen was able to make a nice contest on an off balance floater by Jamal Bianemi of Tompkins, and then Jalen Walker gets the rebound, and then at that time, Donovan Parham and Isaiah Stevens for Allen have already started sprinting up the court. So Walker gets the rebound and just has the presence of mind. You'd think in that moment, because there was about 5 seconds left or so. So you were thinking maybe call a timeout, just drop a play. But no, they get the rebound. He has the presence of mind to look up court and then just heaves an outlet pass up the floor to Donovan Parham, who again streaking wide open down the floor, and they stroll in for a layup with 1.1 seconds left in overtime to give Allen the 2-point lead.
Tweeted out a video of this, right?
Yeah.
That's where I saw it first. Yeah.
How crazy was that celebration?
It was I've never seen a basketball game end that way. Period. To where you have that big because you're just thinking at that point, like if Allen can just get a stop here, that you're playing for overtime, and then when you see the ball, because we're all just like watching the ball and just watching to see what happens there. So when Walker throws that pass and everybody looks up and sees how wide open Donovan Parham is, and oh my God, Katie Tompkins doesn't have anybody back. Allen's going to literally stroll right in and potentially walk off and win a state championship. Donovan Parham, and also that's just a cool story too, because he's kind of one of the unsung heroes on that team. He was their backup point guard, known for his defense primarily. So him getting
that's why he was on the court.
Yeah, so him getting to make the biggest shot in the history of Allen boys basketball, a very, very cool subplot. So yeah, he strolls in for the layup with 1.1 seconds left, and then there was I think 4 timeouts that were called in between that and the last possession, whereas Tompkins tried to keep it down and get one last shot off, and but yeah, Allen won its first ever state title in boys basketball, and just a fun team to cover top to bottom. Just a strong year for the Eagles on the basketball court. Some other notable occurrences from this past year for Allen athletics: the tennis team snapped Plano West's 144 match district winning streak in tennis. There was a crazy match that back in, I want to say it was either early September, late August. It was a match that lasted 7 hours. They actually had to switch venues because the last match went on for so long at Plano West. The lights on the tennis courts were on a timer and they shut off. And there's no way to get it back on, so they had to go to Lifetime Fitness to continue that final match. And then Allen was able to come away with the victory there. The tennis team wound up advancing to the regional finals that year. You also had in swimming. Allen's Jason Park won the first gold medal for the boys swim team since 2001. I have 11 on my notes. It's actually 2001, and this was a crazy race too. In this, it was in the 100 backstroke. Two swimmers broke the 6A state record. Jason Park and Shane Casas. So two athletes broke the state record, and Jason Parks just happened to be, 3 thousandths of a second faster. So
that's got to be a debate.
Imagine that.
Yeah. You set a state record and you finished second.
You
got your personal best.
So it took the best time ever in Class 6A to win that race, and even then, setting the state record wasn't enough to win a state title. So a great year for Jason Park, who'd been right on the cusp of winning that state title for a while. Was able to follow through on that as a
what grade is he?
As a senior. So it was his last race. So what a better way to go out than that. You had the girls soccer team advancing to the regional finals, having one of their best years in program history. In track, Tosin Alau won silver at the state meet in the triple jump. The softball team, that was a cool story. Softball team clinching its first playoff berth since 2005. I was at this last game. game. It was on the final game of the regular season in a wild walk-off win against Wiley, where they needed to win that game. Otherwise, Plano East would have got that last playoff spot. That was probably, I would say, in excluding teams that have won state championships, that's probably as happy a team as I've ever seen after clinching a playoff spot. I mean, the emotions were, that was an emotional post game for for those girls who, like I said, I mean, snapping a 13-year playoff drought to do it in a district like 6-6A. That was
every game counts.
Yeah, that was an impressive year for the Lady Eagles. And then obviously not to leave out Lovejoy. Lovejoy was doing some great things over in Class 5A. The big thing with Lovejoy this year that really stuck out was just the resilience of some of their boys' athletics teams, which just had a knack for a flair for the dramatic, so to speak. You had the football team, which, as you mentioned, they started off the year 0-5, finished the year 5-5, and made the playoffs. They advanced to the second round.
Cost more for some pigs. Make them take some L's in the pick 'em.
Probably, yeah.
You don't sound bitter at all about that, Brian.
I don't want to talk about it.
You had the boys basketball team for Lovejoy, which made the playoffs in a play-in game against West Mesquite, a West Mesquite team that actually had defeated them just a few days earlier to force that play-in game. Lovejoy was able to win that play-in game, get the last playoff spot in 15-5A, and then you had the baseball team, which swept Royce City during the final week of the regular season to rally and clinch a playoff spot. Then you had the teams that were a bit more authoritative. You have volleyball, another great year for volleyball. One district went to the regional finals. The boys soccer team won their district as well and went to the regional quarterfinals. Cross country, adding some more hardware to that trophy case, they repeated as state champions, the third time in 10 years that Lovejoy's boys cross country team has won a state title. And then you had Grace Ridgway, who medaled once again in state track. She got third in the pole vault. So, whew. That's what happened. That's what happened in Allen in 2017-18. That was a mouthful. So
you should just did a top 5 in Allen.
There's never a dull moment covering athletics in Allen and Plano for that matter. So yeah, just a look at 2017-18 for not just Allen but for Frisco, for McKinney, and that'll just about do it for this edition of the Star Local Media Sports Podcast. We got 4 more markets that we're going to hammer out next Monday in our last year in review podcast. Hey, once again, folks, this has been Matt Welch, Star Local Media. Brian, Kendrick, appreciate y'all for tagging along. Folks, y'all enjoy the rest of your week. We will talk to y'all later.